Yeah, g'day YouTubers. Tinker O'Toole again here with another video. Today we're going to talk about a square ground skip chain. So we'll just talk about a skip chain and a normal chain. And it's interesting with all the other videos I've been doing lately on the hexa and all that there. And it's just interesting if you look at the chainsaw industry, if you go back to the very beginning when Joseph Cox first filed a patent, I think in 1948, for the Cox chipper chain, and that patent was approved in 1950. So it's going back quite a long time. But also Joseph Cox invented, put another patent out. In 1952 it was passed, approved for the full chisel chain. And he also had two other patents for the depth gauges in 1955. One was an adjustable depth gauge. I think that was earlier than 55. And then he had the standard flat gauge. I think it was 25 thou on one end and 30 thou on the other. So, and then there was another guy called Ray Carlton that actually worked for Joe, but left and formed his own company. And Ray Carlton got a patent out for the semi-chisel chain. He filed it, I think in 1961, but it got rejected that many times, probably because it was so close to the Cox chipper chain, that eventually in 1964 it was approved. So that's interesting. And then he went on and he invented the philo plate in 1968, got a patent for that, and that was for the progressive depth gauge. Now, one thing that's interesting about patents, and I've got my name on about 5 patents, and a lot of big companies produce a lot of patents, and I'll probably give you a bit of a shock here, but Still had published, and I don't know from when, probably from the very first existence of Still, but 4,523 patents they filed, of which 3,183 had been granted. So Still have got 3,183 patents that they've been granted. And what that essentially does is stop every other company working in a lot of other areas. The largest company in 1923 to have the largest patents was Samsung, over 6,000 patents. So essentially, when you've got a multi-billion-dollar company, filing patents just stops other people working in that area that you're working in. Essentially, that's what it does. And I sort of think that there should be a law that says that if you file a patent and you fail to manufacture, then that patent will elapse after 3 or 4 years. But yeah, we done the same thing when we filed a patent. We were working in an area and we knew who our competitors were. So we knew that if we filed a patent, that it would stop others from working in that area. And that's what all companies do this day. China is notorious for it now. I think there's some incredible amount. It's just like hundreds of thousands of patents. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. It's an enormous amount. I think it was 700,000. It was something ridiculous. But yeah, big companies in China. So that brings us back to the skip chain, which was the focus of the video, but I just wanted to sort of give you some background information. And the skip tooth chain. Don't know who really started doing it or who invented it, but it has a square ground in it, and we'll talk about that. But essentially, we've got a 20-inch chain here, and it has 36 teeth for a standard chain. That's the one down the bottom there. A skip tooth skips a tooth. You can have semi-skip or full skip. So this is a full skip. So the same size chain, which is a 20 inch, so we've both got 20 inch. This one has 36 teeth, 18 a side. The skip tooth has 24 teeth, 12 per side. Now what that essentially means, it will cut slower, but you can have a longer bar on your chainsaw. So in other words, you could put a 25 inch bar on your chainsaw. Now, if you were to put a 25 inch bar on your chainsaw, you're going to have a lot of extra teeth, and you'll find out that the horsepower that's in your chainsaw can struggle. So someone come up with a great idea, and as I said, I don't know who, that if they skipped a tooth, then it would cut slower, but it would get through the log. And it really does work good. So then they thought, okay, we won't have full chisel, we'll have square ground. Now, square ground looks totally different than full chisel. So square ground has a fairly straight side plate on it, and it can have anywhere from 15 degrees on the top plate, and then the side plate could have a 15-degree angle on it too. So the actual skip chain, this is the one that I got from Still, so it's a Still, this is a Still skip chain. It's got 15 degrees on the top plate, and as I said, 12 teeth per side, so a total of 24 teeth, and the actual side plate angle is 15 degrees. So from 90 degrees, it tilts to 75 degrees. So, yeah. That's the way it works. And if we zoom in, hopefully we can get a really good view of what that square ground tooth looks like for those that may have not seen one. So full chisel, but I think you can see in there quite good. We'll try and get a right-hand cutter. It might show up better. Yeah, that's showing up fantastic. Look at that. So that's what your your square ground chain looks like. You'll notice if we actually look into this part here. So the grinder creates this little step. Now you've got to make sure that when you sharpen the chain, the technical word for it is shelf. And what you've got to make sure is that shelf doesn't get too long. If it gets too long, it can affect the discharge of the chips. So you'll get a good view of it here. So there it is there, the shelf. Now, this is released by Still, and I don't know, when I asked for this chain, I was after a standard chain. So I wanted to get just a normal standard chain in square ground. Anyway, they said, look, they don't sell it. So I don't know whether that shop just don't sell it, or whether Still don't actually manufacture a full standard chain in square ground. They may not. They may only manufacture it for skip. Reason being is probably 90% of the chains sold out there are going to be semi-chisel. If 10% are full chisel, and it's probably only a couple of percent, 2 or 3% that would have skip chains. So not a huge market for skip chains. But nonetheless, where I actually use it is, let's just say I've got a 72cc saw with a 20-inch bar on it, and you may want to put a 25-inch bar on it. It'll cut through slower, but it won't bog down the saw. So therefore, you'll get an extra 5 inches, so you'll be able to cut through those bigger logs, and it won't bog the saw down. And that's where it works really good. So where would you use it? In what situation would you use a skip chain? Well, if you're going to put a 25-inch bar on, it would generally mean that you're only ever going to use it for much, much larger timber. It doesn't mean that you're going to use it every day. It's not your everyday type of thing. It's something that they use for bigger logs. It's an alternative. Let's put it that way, because you've got semi-chisel, full chisel, hexa, skip tooth. Husqvarna have got their X-cut. Look, there's all different manufacturers that are all very much similar, the same. Most of these chains all work pretty good. And they did say, I tried to find it, but I couldn't. It did say that Hexa had a patent on it. I don't know whether the patent is pending, or I couldn't find it anyway. So I've done a Google search for it, Google patents, couldn't find it. So I don't know. But I do know sometimes a lot of companies do lie about saying they've got a patent, but they don't. I know one particular company that was selling water tanks, corrugated water tanks out of plastics, and they're saying patent pending. I thought, well, you're not going to get a patent on that, because water tank was invented over 100 and something years ago. It's just because it's made out of plastic. To get a patent on something, it's got to be something novel. You know, it's like, just say the first person that invented a pair of pliers that looked like that and put a patent on it. And you come along and say, oh, look, my pliers are a little bit smaller. Well, they're not going to grant a patent on that. No, ain't going to happen. But if you come up with a pair of pliers like this, well, it's totally different concept. So you'll get a patent on something like that. So with chainsaws, and I remember reading up when Ray Carlton went for the patent for the semi-chisel, he also had a lot of court battles. He's in and out of court for quite a few years. So it took him over 3.5 years to get that patent granted. So, yeah, he had a big fight on his hands because, and I haven't read any transcripts, but as I said before, I've got my name on quite a few patents. What the problem would have been is that if you look at the Cox chipper chain, it had a very round edge on it, sort of like a bit of a question mark, whereas the Ray's semi-chisel just had the rounded section on the edge, flat on top, just a little bit of a curve on the edge. And although it's very, very similar, it is slightly different, and that would have been the grounds of rejection, that it's very, very similar and very, very close. You're only talking about an angle. So, you know, to get a patent approved just because you're changing a slight angle's pretty good. I don't know about today whether you'd be able to try and get away with that. There's so many patents out there that when you do file a patent and it goes, you need a patent attorney, so you've got to have a lawyer. You need to find out whether, you know, someone else is working on it. And when the board approves a patent, there'll be a group of people that will look at it and say, well, is this something novel, or is this something that they're just trying to copy? And if it looks like it's something that you're trying to copy, they'll just reject it, and you'll have to change it all. And you may have to change the shape or the design of what you're doing. So it's not straightforward. But unfortunately, still have got so many patents out there that it stops other companies in anything that's innovative or new coming out. So all the motors, the muffler, so many patents on the chainsaw, it's not funny. As I said, over 3,100 and something. That is an incredible amount. That just puts a red light for other chainsaw companies trying to do certain things. I would imagine Husqvarna has a lot of patents on their saw as well and their designs. So, yeah, interesting. Anyway, I hope that helps. If you were wondering, for the new people out there that sort of watch some of the videos trying to gain some information. So just to briefly recap, a skip tooth chain has a reduction of about 33% of teeth on it. You can get a semi-skip, so you would probably jump, so if we've got 36 and we jump to 24, a semi's going to be in the middle there somewhere between 24 and 36. I don't have the actual numbers on the semi-skip because I've never ever ran one or counted them. And they're not as popular. Most people will probably generally run a full skip chain if they're going to put a longer bar on there to get the advantage. So that's virtually it. A skip chain is generally used when you put a longer bar on, say an extra 3, 4, 5 inches or something like that there, so that it doesn't bog down the saw. So yeah, you don't have to go out and buy a new chainsaw. So let's just say that your chainsaw was nearly $2,000 and you wanted to put a much longer bar on it. It's much cheaper to buy a skip and a longer bar than go out and buy a new chainsaw, because you might find out that you only do it occasionally, so you buy the skip chain for that occasional use. You may be on a farm or something like that, and you get those big logs occasionally, and in this situation it would be good. The only thing is that if you've got to file this with a special file, which is a bit of a hexagonal, not like the hexa, it's totally different. It's flat and has two, well, it is a hexagonal, but they're not equal hexagonals. They're only equal on two sides, either side of the file. There's all different type of ones. There's Goofy. I can't remember what this one is. This is made by Velobe. And you file from the outside of the tooth on full, because you've got to make sure that when you've got the file into the tooth, that the point, the edge of the file is right in line with the corner of the tooth. Because what you want to achieve is that you've got to get your file, we'll see if we can zoom in there and you can see that, you want to be able to get your file right in the middle there where the two corners intersect. So that line, you want to get right in the middle with your file. Your file edge has got to sit right on that line. So that's the way it works. Anyway, I hope that helps, because there's a lot of beginners out there that have maybe start to get into the chainsaws, read about skip tooth as opposed to the full chisel, and that's the difference. Thanks for watching. Give us a thumbs up. Bye for now.